Actually, I'm surprised so far.
That's wild. I was shocked.
Boy, we're all over the map, aren't we? There are 6 types of North American salmon. Which one do you think tastes the best? The answer might surprise you. My fishing buddy Dave and I put all 6 side by side in a salmon tasting event. If you stay till the end, I'll tell you our takeaways along with 4 tips you can use to host your own salmon tasting event. To prepare for this event, we used 4 fish we caught this year, a pink, a sockeye, a Chinook, and a Coho. We also decided to buy 2 more, a chum and a wild Atlantic salmon, just to make it more interesting. I smoked half and Dave grilled the other half. Okay, let me introduce the candidates. And these are in a completely different order than the numbers. Candidate number 1 is the Chinook or king salmon. This is the one that everybody wants to catch, including orca whales. It's also kind of our most endangered fish in the Northwest. This particular Chinook you're eating was caught by me off Tulalip. Because chum has kind of a bad reputation, they're starting to refer to it as Keta salmon. It's kind of the marketing name for it I've seen lately. And this chum was purchased at the Everett Farmers Market from Sea to Shore Seafoods. It was caught off Alaska. And they give the name of the boat and the fisherman when you buy it from them, which is pretty cool. Okay, Coho silver, they're pretty good. Some people actually like them better than Chinook. And this one was wild caught by me off Deception Pass. We went right outside Deception Pass the last time we went fishing. That was a great place to fish.
It was.
But we lost more fish than we caught. So sockeye salmon, they are one of the smaller fish. I think they're just above pinks. You normally can't catch sockeye intentionally out in the Sound, but most people catch them in lakes. So Baker Lake has a really good sockeye fishery, and in the 1980s they were down to under 100 fish because there's 2 dams they had to go up these old fish ladders, and very few of them were making them up. So now what they do is Puget Sound Energy manages all that, and they actually have a facility at Lower Baker Dam outside of Concrete, and they actually capture the fish in these things that are kind of like locks, and they suck them into trucks, and then they have a fish taxi that drives them around 2 dams, and they put them in Baker Lake. And the run this year was over 60,000 fish. And then pink salmon, they think might actually be more abundant nowadays than they were historically. They think it might actually be a problem that they're actually crowding out Chinook and other fish. For some reason, with all the climate change and everything, pinks seem to actually do better than they did in the past. And in Puget Sound, they only come back every other year, and they only come back in odd numbered years. So in even numbered years, we don't have many pinks coming back. They're the smallest ones. They all got mixed in, but we caught a whole bunch of them off the Edmund shipwreck. And then I decided to throw in some farmed Atlantic salmon. Now it's interesting, I was recently at a restaurant in Portland where they had wild Atlantic salmon on the menu. They're lying. They do not sell wild Atlantic salmon in the United States because they're very endangered. They closed a fishery like 50 years ago or something like that. I went fishing at Costco a few days ago, and the fishing was pretty good there. So enough yammering. Let's get on to the fish.
It's hard to tell the difference.
So smoking kind of hides the flavor a bit.
It does, yeah. I'm dying. Just tell us the fish.
Tell us.
But I want to know what the names of the fish are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, she's dying to know.
Everybody have different.
You can write it down here at the
number.
bottom. Just
Okay, you ready for the big reveal?
Yeah.
Yes.
Number 1 is pink salmon. Number 2 is sockeye. You can tell by the red color. Number 3 is the chum.
CHUM.
Yep, CHUM. Number 4 is coho.
CO.
HO.
That's wild.
Number 5 is Chinook. Number 6 is Atlantic, farmed Atlantic.
Holy shit.
Oh, I called that.
No wonder it's the best.
Okay, so how did everybody, Britt, let's start with
I
you.
like Atlantic.
You like Atlantic?
It was my number one.
The Atlantic
In
was-
both.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really quick. Is it because it had less fishy flavor?
Probably it felt buttery and smooth, less fishy, pink.
Boy, we're all over the map, aren't we?
So the grilled, I like the Chinook.
Yeah, that's not a big surprise. Okay, and then what was your least favorite?
It was the Chum.
So surprisingly, my number one grilled was the pink. My least favorite was the Atlantic.
For grilled, Atlantic was number one. I really liked the texture. I felt like it was the most like appealing. And then I because the Chinook had a different texture, it was my bottom actually.
I was shocked. My number one for both grilled and smoked was Atlantic. And then number 2 was Chinook.
Well, I will start with number 2 because Chinook was king salmon was number 2 for both grilled and smoked. For grilled, number 1 was Sockeye.
Okay, so for the grilled, my number 1 was Chinook, and I wrote down it was super moist. And least was Sockeye, and I wrote meh.
Man.
So smoked was Atlantic. I really like the Atlantic.
Wow, okay. And then
My
what
least
was,
favorite was the Sockeye smoked.
really?
And on the smoked, my favorite was the Sockeye. And least favorite was the Chinook.
For smoked, my number one was Sockeye, which I think is like a nostalgia thing for me. My dad always made it like pretty dry, and it was usually Sockeye. And then my bottom was the Chum, and I said it was fishy.
I had a really hard time discerning the flavor differences on the pink Sockeye and Chum in the smoked. Like my palate just couldn't break it apart. I preferred the Coho on smoked a little bit more than the Chinook.
For smoked, number 1 was pink.
The smoked, my number 1 was Coho. But then interestingly, my least favorite was Chinook, which was my favorite grilled.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's our takeaways. First of all, preparation is everything with salmon. You can have the best fish in the world, and if it's not prepared properly, it's not going to taste its best. And it's actually going to skew the results in a competition like this. We also learned that smoking tends to make all the different types of salmon taste more alike. Some of our guests actually had difficulty telling them apart. In my opinion, smoking elevates some of the cheaper, less popular fish like sockeye and pink, but smoking might actually take something away from a really nice Chinook. And a nice fish like that should probably be grilled instead. There's no accounting for taste. People were all over the map as far as what they liked and what they didn't like, and what one person liked, the person next to them didn't like. Everybody was surprised, especially themselves. Farmed Atlantic salmon was very popular. It came in second for the grilled and also ranked very high for the smoked. A lot of people have a preconceived notion that farmed is bad, and although there are some environmental considerations to think about when buying farmed salmon, as far as the taste goes, it was very popular. For the grilled salmon, you can see that Chinook came out on top, which was not a big surprise, but Atlantic was the dark horse candidate, which was not far behind at all, and everything else was behind that. When we served the salmon smoked, you can see that the curve was a little bit flatter. Like the people in the video said, the smoking process seems to kind of make the fish all taste the same. Coho did win, but not by much. Okay, so here's some tips that you can use to host your own salmon tasting event. First of all, I would recommend starting out with a target of 12 ounces per person and divide that up by the number of samples. So in our case, we had 6 smoked samples and 6 grilled samples. So we provided 1 ounce samples of every type of fish. I also recommend putting all the samples together on one plate. We didn't do this at first because we'd never done this before and we were making it up as we went along. Initially, we put them all in different plates and kind of tried to serve them one by one. But people really needed to be able to go back and forth to question, whether the one they just ate was really better or worse than the one they had before. And it was just a lot more helpful to put them together on one plate. I would recommend using numbers to identify them instead of the actual name of the fish. First of all, you don't want people to be biased by their preconceived notions, and using numbers tends to eliminate that problem. Second, people love a mystery, they love a surprise, and we found that several of our guests got really into the suspense of not knowing which kind of fish was which, and they were just dying to know the answer by the end. Finally, I recommend providing bread for people to use to cleanse their palate in between samples. We found that several of our guests made good use of that. So this event was a lot of work to put on. It's not something you'd want to do every day. It was a lot of work to smoke the fish, to grill the fish, and to even procure the fish, or in our case, to catch the fish. And it was a lot of trouble to make sure we kept them separate during the preparation process. However, it was a very unique and fun event. None of us had ever heard of anybody doing a salmon tasting event before, and I think that the people who participated felt like they were honored to be invited. It was just a lot of fun. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. Thank you.